Time now for the Inside Dish. This is the part of the show where I go inside a story I've written recently or maybe inside a trend going on in the game. This week, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. I want to talk about the timing of signings and how these things go down. And what's amazing about baseball, or most interesting about baseball, is that we never quite know about the timing. I touched on this earlier in the show, and I'll touch on it later, the methodical pace of the offseason. But this year we have a particularly interesting circumstance, and that, of course, is the free agency of Shohei Ohtani. When is he going to sign? Will he wait for Yamamoto? Will he go at the winter meetings? How is this all going to work? With Ohtani, you would think it shouldn't take too long. The teams that are interested, they're not going to be a surprise. We know essentially who they are. They know essentially, or it's to some degree, how much money it's going to take. And you would think that those teams are going to want to go quickly. Because if you're committing $500 million to a single player, I'm just throwing that number out there, then you want to know if he's going to take that money, because if he doesn't, you're going to move on to other players. Now, I've mentioned this in other shows, and it's kind of interesting to me, this angle. The idea of waiting for Yamamoto to sign if you're Shohei Ohtani, because if you do that, you're going to put other teams on tilt. So if Yamamoto signs, for instance, with the Giants, then the teams that miss out on Yamamoto, the Red Sox, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, whoever you want to name, all these big market clubs, you would think at that point they'll be that much more motivated to go get Ohtani, even though he cannot pitch next season. At the same time, why would Ohtani need to wait, right? For all the reasons I mentioned earlier. So that dynamic is in play. We'll see how it all plays out. The other aspect of this that is really interesting is the number of free agents, top free agents, who are represented by Scott Boras. And I want to show you the list here of position players and pitchers represented by Boras, because it's kind of telling. All right, here are the position players. Really the two top guys, Cody Bellinger and Matt Chapman, both represented by Scott Boras, along with Jung-Hoo Lee, the Korean outfielder who is coming over, who is well thought of as well, and two lesser free agents but prominent names, JD Martinez and Rhys Hoskins. Then there are the Boras clients who are pitchers. Some of the best here too. Two of the best for sure. Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery, along with Nick Martinez and Frankie Montas. There are other players also represented by Scott Boras, other free agents, but those are the big ones. Now, it leads to the question, okay, how is Boras going to proceed? How is he going to want to stack these guys as he goes forward? I go back to the 2019 winter meetings. Garrett Cole, Anthony Rendon, Steven Strasburg, all represented by Scott Boras. Within 3 days at the winter meetings, each of those guys signed. They signed for huge dollars, over $800 million combined. So it could be at the winter meetings that Boras goes quickly, that he takes Bellinger off the board, he takes Snell off the board, he takes Montgomery off the board. Could happen. Also could happen that these things drag out. Bryce Harper, most famously, several years back, a Scott Boras client, did not sign until February. Boras does not proceed by any clock but his own. And that will be the case again. So if he feels like he's getting the deals he wants, bingo, he'll act. If he does not feel that way, he's not going to care if guys like me are sitting there saying, let's go. It's not going to bother him one bit. So he, in essence, controls parts of each of those markets, large segments of each of those markets. And that is going to be something that we'll be following, obviously, at the winter meetings and beyond. Now, as we get closer to the winter meetings, as I talk about the winter meetings, what I always love about the meetings are the ones where it turns into, well, for lack of a better term, a spending orgy. Now, 2019 was like that. The guys I mentioned, Cole, Rendon, Strasburg, and there were a couple of others like that as well. Again, the best winter meetings are the ones where the spending gets insane. Now, fans might say, I don't like that. Ticket prices are going to go up. Ticket prices are not a reflection of salaries. For the 100th time, they're a reflection of supply and demand. The money, when it starts flowing, that's when the action gets really interesting. So, the year 2000, the winter meetings then. A-Rod, $252 million. Manny Ramirez, $160 million. Mike Hampton, $121 million. And who can forget? Darren Dreifert, $55 million. 2010, Jason Worth, 126 million. That was a big deal at the time. In fact, I got a text from a GM moments after the number broke, and the text said, that number is blank crazy. Won't say what the blank is. This is a family show, but you can imagine. Then, also at those same winter meetings, Carl Crawford for 142 million. 2017, I go back to that one too. Albert Pujols. That was a frenzy around his signing at the winter meetings, which took place in Dallas that year, I believe, which was also the place where A-Rod signed. Pujols goes for $254 million to the Angels. C.J. Wilson, same winter meeting, $77.5 million. Again, the best winter meetings are the ones where we get that kind of action. And I'm not saying it's going to happen at this one. I'm not saying it's not. But the timing here is going to be critical, and that's my point. How Boras proceeds, how Ohtani chooses to handle his free agency, whether he signs quickly or not, whether he waits for Yamamoto or not. These things all have a pace of their own. And remember, with Yamamoto, he is already on the clock of sorts. He's the one guy. Actually, there'll be a couple of others too who are posted. Imanaga, one of them. Guys who are posted, they have 45 days from the day they are posted until the time that they must sign. So there is a deadline in place for them. Again, I don't expect Ohtani to wait that long, but he could. And in some ways, it would serve his interest to do that. I just don't know that teams that are interested in him are going to be willing to tell his agent, Nez Bolello of CAA, no problem, Nez, take this to January. No, they need answers before then. So we will see how this all plays out. Next week on the show, maybe I'll do some of my favorite winter meeting stories that don't necessarily involve spending orgies. But I'm telling you guys, when the money starts to flow, that's when these things start to sizzle.